Where there is violence, there is also hope. Speaking Human, available now at Amazon.com.
And welcome to our YouTube guests. Of course, you can always see this live at periscope.tv/an-autist. And hello to all our Periscope people who are throwing chats up and down the screen as we progress. Okay, we just had an awesome meet and greet with our Periscope people, those of you watching this on YouTube /Gabsmacked. And now we can jump in. This week, ladies and gentlemen, I did not offer the doctor a tea nor a handshake because these are outside of the boundaries I have come to learn with this particular awesome Doctor of Wednesday Wisdom. What I did perceive, though, was his haircut. Now, he gets a haircut normally between every 3 and 5 weeks. This time, however, when he cut his hair, he left the top of his hair a little bit longer than he ever has over the last 3 years that I've known him. And I did say that to him. He said to me immediately, why is it something that has interested you enough or sparked your curiosity enough to comment on the fact that your haircut, it's a lot of haircuts, born analysis. And I said to him, because I am very curious about human beings, because I am constantly overwhelmed with patterns that I don't understand. And I have dedicated my life, really, out of everything I've ever done. All of it is all a sideshow. What I've really been trying to do is dedicate my life to understanding the patterns that I see amongst human beings, to try and get this society, culture, poetry, human nature. Ask questions like that all the time. Very cool. There you go. I'm not the only one. I'm just commenting to people on Periscope, those on YouTube who wonder, why am I talking to myself? Yes, there are people here. It's sort of like, you know, when you always change your hair, so is your pattern change? Me deliberately changing my haircuts, yes, it is deliberate. And it is also why sometimes in the past I had walked around with fake beards or fake religious garb or changing my accents. Yes, that is deliberate. And that is something that my doctor, being an expert in autism, very correctly noticed that I do. And he says that people with autism actually do this. He said, me with the savantism, I do it to a higher level. But they all do this because they want to try and understand the different reactions that people get. In fact, that's what children do. You used to wear wigs and a lot of hats. You are the smart one, Samira. You've left. Yeah, he actually said that children do this when they're very young, but people with autism continue to do this as they're growing up. Your questions always bring out the best, Liran. That's why Liran Salvatore is a guest panelist. Okay, so mimicry, exactly. And it's over-exaggerated mimicry because we don't understand how exactly. And this is one of the reasons, as you guys know, when I got kicked out of the science lab, out of the scholarship, so it made me curious. Yes, thank you. So coming back to the doctor, I actually said to him that he is very predictable and very precise with his actions. And so when he does something slightly different, I become very curious as to why. Oh, did I get kicked out of my scholarship? I did. I got kicked out of my scholarship. At the time, I was irate. I was quite irrational, actually. That's a pun on words, ladies and gentlemen. I have another channel on Periscope called Irrational. For those on YouTube who are wondering why I would say that. However, I did discover later that people were unable to understand my behavior, which was exceeding boundaries. Yes, you call it high energy. So I am what we now call, Samira, a boundary and risk blind human being. Now, it's sort of sad and sort of good. It's good because it makes these great pieces of information which we can share with the world for years to come, fingers crossed, and other people can take these ideas and make them better and better, and that's the whole point of humanity, in one way. The other thing is, so boundaries are something that, yes, people learn to develop as they grow up and become adults. But when you have pervasive developmental disorder, oh, that's so cool, Samira, you have a beautiful trip on the bus. What actually happens is that with pervasive developmental disorder, which is part of autism, but you can have it without having autism, is that you don't develop the ability to understand where boundaries are. And part of that is to do with autism, but part of it is also a positive feedback loop which comes from having autism. So autism can make autism worse, if that makes any sense. It's sort of like, if you have autism, in my case, I could sort of function reasonably well, but not enough to blend in with society. So by the age of 3, I specifically remember very clearly, as if it was 5 minutes ago, I remember what people were wearing my age, in other words, the other 3-year-olds, and I remember how ostracized I was. And that ostracization, actually disallows you to go through standard rites of passage that other people go through at age 3. So they might learn how to play in the yard together. I didn't learn that. And so what does that do? What is the net effect? The net effect is that your autism gets worse. So the phenotype of the autism gene, in other words, your displayed behavior gets worse. You were like this. You had autism. And I said, oh, there you go. There you go. So other people are identifying with this, for those on YouTube who are wondering why this is happening. Encased in your own autism echo chamber. I love that. Isn't that interesting? Let me pause. Sorry if I miss anyone's comments. Obviously, I'm talking to YouTube as well. But the fascinating thing was that I said to the doctor, it's like I've woken up out of a coma. I'm 30 something, Salty Nymph. Awesome artist. Everyone go into Instagram, look up the Salty Nymph. Some awesome artwork. It's quite hilarious. It's so out there, which is why I love it. Which is the whole point of art, really, I would think. Now, what was I saying? Sorry, ADHD has now left. So I came out of it's like I've come out of a coma. I'm 30 something years old, but my brain is still 21. So because of that ostracization, I never went to people's birthday parties. I never went to 18s or 21st or anything like that. So I didn't know what people's lives were like, but I was hyper curious. And that was one of the reasons I became a DJ, so that I could learn to see the patterns of human behavior and see what birthday parties were like. And I would get to experience them in a way I never could have otherwise. Salvatore, ciao. That was a fascinating thing that the doctor heard about me. Yes, and like an awakening. Oh, that's a bot. All right. So as I started to pick up the patterns, I would start to try to mix with other people in the crowds as I would do more and more iterations of the same 21st. It was like Groundhog Day. Every time I DJ'd a 21st birthday, I was learning more and more about 21-year-olds. So by the time I was 22, I'd picked up a fair bit about what I guess an average 21-year-old might have expected. I would listen to their speeches, so I would know at a very low resolution what it was like to be 21. But I wasn't getting what you would call nuances, which is more the high resolution day-to-day interactions. Now, I got enough courage after DJing for about 12 months to sit at the end of the party with a group of 21-year-olds. But of course, not only is observation important, but motor control. I did not have very good motor control growing up. And that's something I had to concentrate on. And I've told this to my followers a year ago. I had a little drink, I think it was orange juice or whatever it was. And I'm learning how to imitate them and saying, yeah, that's right. Oh, that's a great song. And I was learning to try and pull it off. And then when I put the drink on the table, I had still not yet known that motor control was important. I'm a super driver, which is unusual, right? What I did was I slammed the glass down onto the table and smashed everyone's drinks off the table because of the sheer force of hitting the table. So I hadn't yet learned how to put a drink on a table. So that's a specific motor control. Driving, that's different. I didn't have very good motor control driving when I started. But once I learned specific motor skills, I can pick them up extremely quickly because of the savant nature of my brain. So I'm very unusually lucky that I have that ability. And that, I think, is one of the few reasons that I'm able to go to Wednesday Wisdom, pick up these mistakes from the past, or say, deviations from neurotypical behavior, analyze them, chew them up, spit them back out here on our Wednesday Wisdom scopes. So we're sitting there, and as I crossed my left foot over my right knee, and I noticed that the doctor had a glance at my shoe. Now, I didn't notice that he glanced at my shoe 8 days previously when I saw him last Tuesday when I did the same thing. So I stopped and I asked him, is it okay that I'm crossing my feet in that way? And he said to me, of course it is. Why wouldn't it be? Why would you ask that question? And I told him that I noticed that he made the same glance out of his peripheral vision 8 days ago when I crossed my foot the same way. And I thought that maybe it was a problem for him. And he said to me, it's not a problem. But what is a problem is that you're coming to conclusions based upon observations. And so it allows you to not see other conclusions that you could have come up with. Now, he asked me, why, Mikasa Schist, were you so interested in that particular thing? And I told him, well, in 1993, when I was 12, my great uncle, in other words, my grandfather's uncle, that's my great uncle. Yeah, spotlight thinking versus big picture, exactly. So my grandfather's uncle, my great uncle, said to me, don't cross your legs like that. If I was younger, I would slap you across the face because it's very rude. So apparently there's a big thing in Middle Eastern culture where you can't show the sole of your shoe to someone. That's really rude. And I said to him that was part of the reason I asked the doctor that question. So he then put it together and said, the issue is that in your brain, you haven't learnt the idea of boundaries. People have psychological boundaries. And it's almost, what did he call it? He called it a SemiPermeable membrane, where this psychological membrane allows certain things in, but keeps what it deems to be potentially toxic out until you get to know other people. Because by allowing them to know certain things about you, personal space bubbles, yeah, it allows you to display some sort of vulnerability to them, according to him. And so people have a right to choose when they let that vulnerability out to other people. And all of this was blowing my mind. Like, today was one of the biggest Wednesday Wisdom lessons I've ever had, because these two issues for me, I think, have resulted in almost every single big problem I've ever had in my life come from these two things. All right, let's pause YouTube for a sec. I'm going to go through a few examples that came up in today's lesson. One was that in 1995, I asked a teacher if he was gay. So that's the first one. The next one was asking a random woman on the street to go out for coffee. So that's the second one I'm going to talk about. The next one was telling a girl that my friend thought she was pretty, whilst my friend was in front of me, and I didn't know that you're not supposed to do that. So that's those three things. The next one is that I can't see it right now. Anyway, so those are the three things about about boundaries, right? And then my brain doesn't see that. So the first one, asking the teacher if he's gay. Now, I didn't really give a damn if he was gay or not. That wasn't my concern. But usually I do this on purpose here. And and the last example was the fact that this guy in my book, Dr. Samuel, loved the fact that I apparently according to him, didn't give a damn. I had no inhibitions. I would just walk up to any girl and talk to them back when I was 20, 21, when I'd just come back from Lebanon and had learned how to dress and walk sort of reasonably and became a DJ and stuff. Anyway, so I'm going to go through all of those. And I'll start with Dr. Samuel first. With Dr. Samuel, it wasn't that I lacked inhibitions. Yeah, people call it smooth. No, it was that my brain was blind to potential things that would embarrass me because my brain, Samira, was not aware of social nuances that other people are aware of. So let's come back to the are you gay thing first. The reason I wanted to know if he was gay was because my father, growing up, talked about the importance of marriage, as many fathers and mothers would. So it wasn't anything out of the norm, I've come to discover. However, because I had this understanding that you somehow supposed to get married at a certain time by the time I was at school, I noticed that I'm at my school and there is a teacher who looks like he's well into his 30s or 40s. Ironically, I'm now well into my 30s, and he wasn't married. So I didn't understand how he could not be married. How could my dad be wrong? So I said, logically, are you gay? I just thought, okay, maybe he's gay. And that would, if he said yes, you're late, I am late. If he said yes, I'd be like, oh, okay, that makes sense and I can move on with my life. However, what my psych said to me was that you missed some social nuances. Number one, you asked this teacher this in the 90s, which was a long time ago, right? And so some people might have been extra sensitive to that back then as compared to today. Number two, this guy was teaching at a private Catholic boys' school. So Catholicism hasn't necessarily been a friend of a gayness. You're a late beginner. There you go, Salvatore. Hasn't been a friend of gayness for the last 2,000 years. And I'm not talking about Catholics in general. I'm not talking about Catholic adherents or the entire church. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that the perception is that. Okay, so we're back. All right, and so therefore it could be seen as highly offensive to some people if you ask them that question. Now, it was not that I was uninhibited, it was that I was unaware of all of these social nuances. Uninhibited would mean that I was aware of them and did it anyway. That's different. I was actually not aware of them, so I was extremely naive, and therefore, not being aware of the boundary, just walk around as if there is no boundary. And that gets me into a lot of problems, as we've seen in that case. The next one, he actually said to me, it's sort of like asking a German if they support Hitler. Right? There's a degree of sensitivity about German history if you're German. So you have to sort of be careful, respectful in that way. When you have autism, you're not necessarily aware of those type of things. Theory of mind, exactly, theory of mind. All right, the next one was the asking the women out. Okay, so I told him that when I was a DJ, I didn't have a problem. I could ask a girl out and it would work. I also noticed that when I had staff and I had a company and I had people with me, Tom Chatelet, also, if I asked a girl out, it would work. But I also noticed, Boogie Bumper, that when the company was dissolved and the other period of my life when the DJing ended, after those two instances, when I asked a woman out, I would get nothing. And so I started to realize that, hold on, it depends on who I am as to whether it works. But the doctor helped clarify it. He said that relationships with neurotypicals work under a process of engagement. So firstly, there's an engagement, not engagement to get married, but they have to be engaged with you as a person. They have to realize that you exist, and they have to know something about you before they make the decision to even want to move towards a path of a friendship, knowing them, and then subsequently a relationship. He said, however, when you were a DJ, that engagement was already done for you because you're DJing to the crowd. So the crowd knows you as the DJ and the one playing the music. So they already have some engagement with you. You're not just some random, extra human being. You're the DJ. And so therefore, when you ask them out, there is already some engagement, which means that your success rate is going to be higher. Now, he said the same thing, like a mini. That's exactly what I said to him. I said it's sort of like a celebrity, not in the sense of an ego way, but in the sense that with celebrities, people already know them in a way. In other words, they know their name. They sort of know something about them. So there's some level of engagement which is different from just the rest of the population. Gives you agency in their life. Yeah, something like that. Absolutely. Yes, absolutely, exactly. And it was the same thing with the company. With a company, people know you're a CEO of this company. You've got heaps of staff. You're in the businesses. You've got a reputation. So it takes a lot of the work out of the process. And I said to him, that must be one of the benefits of neurotypicals, Captain Deltron, hanging around with people, because I could never, is compelling to some, yeah, I could never understand the point of competence. Yes, I could never understand the point of people hanging out. I never understood that. I never did it. As you know, never did the birthday parties, the weddings, the funeral, any of that stuff. I never understood the concept. However, I've come to learn that what happens is that on the peripheral of your social horizon, Okay, so your social horizon, the peripherals, you then, not even one. I would say there might have been one or two, but they would have been ones that my mum or dad forced me when I was younger or something like that. But then as I was saying, I became a DJ specifically so that I could understand what birthday parties look like outside the church at the funeral. Exactly. So I'm starting to go to funerals now more and weddings and whatever, not specifically funerals, but I'm trying to do more of this social thing to try and understand what I was missing all those years. So it turns out that one of the logical and functional benefits of having friends, which I would now explain to my younger autistic self, I would say to my younger self, alrighty. So what I noticed was that I would say to my younger self that the reason that you need to go out, am I enjoying it? Ooh, that's a good question. So as I was saying, my younger self would need to hear from me today that the reason that you do this is because there's a functional purpose. And that functional purpose was to increase your social horizon in terms of your connectivity with other humans so that you could have engagement with females so that they would know you in the same way that I had that effect when I was that quote unquote mini celebrity effect, when I had that mini celebrity effect. So that would replace the mini celebrity effect. In other words, most people have social circles, and on the edge of those circles, maybe your friend's girlfriend has her sister that comes to one of the parties or the barbecues, and that's how you meet each other. And that is how exactly, chill, people drinking, smoking, no. But now I get what the chilling is for, at least in that degree of freedom. So just for that reason, I would say to people with autism, that is why you have the social sphere, so that you can generate potential engagement with strangers. So therefore, you have the chance of actually having a partner in the future, which is part of the reason why. I guess I've answered my own question of my younger self. My younger self couldn't understand why an older 30 plus would not be married. Well, my response to my younger self to find a mate, exactly, is that I did not go into social spheres, and so therefore the chance of finding a mate was significantly reduced. So the next part was, what I said to the doc was that I discovered that I developed a natural gift at obtaining first dates, but I was also very good at destroying the second date. So I was very good at attracting and then repelling. And one of the problems the main problem, once again, boundaries. What I would do was try to analyze what the person was, what they did, what they thought, generating patterns, and then telling them too much about myself, because I didn't understand that you have to have this degree of acceptance of outside information. And also, you don't want to rob someone of their choice to learn about you when they want to learn about you. They don't want also to be perceived to be known more than they want to give up information. Big mistake. There you go. So it's a lose-lose. 80-20. I like that 80-20 rule. If you tell someone your behavior is consistent with someone who's like this, if you're right, you lose, because they don't want you to know more about them than they want you to know. And if you're wrong, you lose for the obvious reason. Just for our YouTube people, someone said on Periscope that the more they know about us, the chance increases that they won't like us. So it's better to keep it to your chest. So that made a lot of sense, because I never understood, why do people hide stuff? Why do you have to play these games and figure out stuff about people? Just talk. I didn't understand this idea, as I've just explained. Now, the last one I'm going to talk about was when I was 14. I was outside the church with my friend who's in the book, who's no longer a friend. Some people call it playing games. Small talk, small talk, play games. These are the names that I've given it my whole life. But I think in hindsight, it's sort of equivalent to dehumanizing someone. We're taking out of this very delicate psychological ritual the actual importance of it by calling it small talk and games. Zero tolerance, there you go. It is torture. It is torture, absolutely. All right, so the last one was that I was with this guy who's my ex-friend, and this girl came up to us that he liked, and I said to him, "You're right, she is pretty." Now, he got really angry at me for doing that. And I could never understand until today why that was a problem. And what the doc explained to me. All right. So what happened was that I actually took the decision out of my friend's hands as to when to release that information to this girl. And so he had the right, based upon his own risk profile or how he thought the situation would go, as to whether to take the risk to expose himself psychologically in a vulnerable method. Now, I didn't understand any of that until today, at the age of 37 and a half. I finally got that. And I was firstly furious. I talked to the girl. Yeah, that's true. I was furious at the fact that I didn't know this at a younger age. So I have a natural predisposition towards sensitivity to negative emotions. Now, this is quite normal if you have a very open temperament and you're prone to depression and you're a musician and you're highly creative, which is all of myself and many of you guys here. And so you naturally focus on the negative way more than other people. And so my natural disposition was to say, if only I knew this, I could have had more friends, I could have had a better life. Hello, true faith. I could have had a girlfriend at the right time. Boss Briggs on Periscope just said it's like pushing someone into the pool before they're ready. That's a very, very good one. Exactly right. So where are we? What was the point? German ancestry, it's borderline sociopath. Very cool. So this explained why my friendships died in the backside so quickly. Now, asking people out worked when they had engagement that I was oblivious to. I don't know what that note means. Rites of passage that I didn't get, and so I DJ tonight. I've said that. Autism positive feedback loop, I spoke about that. And the environment needs to be good enough for the development to occur. That's what he said. He said that if you're born in the 80s like I was with someone just said good soil, exactly, good soil. So when you have parents who don't know what autism is, and it's not their fault, because in the 80s no one really knew what autism was in general in Australia, and a migrant family, like it's almost impossible that they would know that. So the child gets misunderstood at home and in public. And so they are constantly alienated and then develop even more autism, in a sense, more of a display of autism, because they continue to diverge over time from neurotypicality because they're not picking up the rites of passage that a society has within its network. And that's about it. Borders and risk. People with autism tend to not understand the borders of the psychological borders, and they don't understand risk because you need theory of mind for both of those things. And theory of mind is the ability to understand something called a perspective. I use the word perspective all the time, but every time you hear me use the word perspective, it's a very big deal because I could not understand perspective, perception, and bias. Only a glimpse of it in my late 20s, but I really didn't understand it consciously until only 3 or 4 years ago, and I've been studying it obsessively. I'm just very lucky that I can learn, as you guys know, I learn languages in a few hours, so I've been able to learn a lot of this psychological stuff very quickly, touch wood. So there are some benefits to being a savant. Context, exactly. That I guess, I don't know if they outweigh the disadvantages, but they at least result in YouTube and Periscope videos. So I'm going to say goodbye to all the people on YouTube. It was a pleasure to see you. I look forward to your comments. Comment below and let me know. Yes, thank you very much. Crazy how much we've learned together. I've learned a lot from my Periscope people. I think more than they've learned from me, I would have to say. And if you like what you see here and you want to see more, click right here to see more. All right, let's go.
Bullies come in all forms. Jamil was an autistic savant, motivated by a desperate need to help others. Language, music, and math just made sense, and his genius led him straight to the top of the firm. But this is the real world, where perceptions can lead to tragedy. Speaking Human is the true story of a gifted man misunderstood as sinister, who paid the ultimate price. Speaking Human, The Tragedy of the Retarded Genius by Adrian Ferguson. Where there is violence, there is also hope. Speaking Human, available now at Amazon.com.